Hello and welcome back. Ladies and gentlemen, it is officially Mika March. 5 goals, 9 points in 4 games last week. The Rangers were on fire. Last night, Kreider tied John Rattel for most goals in the month of March by a Ranger with 52. Zibanejad is 5th on that list with 47, but scored those 47 goals in only 90 games. 39 games quicker than Kreider, 56 games quicker than Rattel. And in his career, Zibanejad has 62 goals in the month of March. That's 4th most since he entered the league, behind Ovechkin, Stamkos, and Crosby. So 3 borderline generational talents are ahead of Zibanejad in terms of goal scoring in the month of March. But Zibanejad is owned up, as are most of his line mates and teammates for that matter. So as we always do, let's take a look at the guys that you can own, the top performers from last week under 50% owned, 3 forwards, 2 defense, 1 goaltender, an honorable mention at the end, and we also have some very insane drama that went down in the THHL as a result of one of these top players, so stay tuned for that. But let's start where we always do, with the forwards, and the number 1 forward this week is a guy that the Rangers face quite often, but obviously not as much of a rival this year, and that's Owen Tippett with the Philadelphia Flyers. Dual position, left wing, right wing, 16% owned, 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points, 2 power play points, and 13 shots over the past 3 games last week, 4.33 shots per game. Incredible shot volume. He did have a hat trick against Buffalo in that one game, and that's the only game where his ice time was arguably this low. Normally he's above 20 minutes per game lately, 22 here against Vegas, 20 against Carolina. So John Tortorella seems to trust him, and he's been rewarding that trust with some production lately. Over his last 11 games, 9 points, 6 goals, 3 assists, and 4.7 shots per game, 1.54 hits per game in the last 11 games. So he's been getting it done for a while, not just the last week. If you look at his player hub, 92nd percentile in shot volume, almost 3 shots per game, 88th percentile in goals, 0.33 goals per game. That's 21 goals in 64 games, which is pretty good for a team that's struggling for offense. He's relatively complete, gets some power play production, hits, blocks, assists are a tad low, but not anything to be concerned with. He is at 0.6 points per game, or just thereabout, but he is really complete across all of his categories. So if you're in a categories league and you need somebody that's going to cover a little bit of everything and give you that shot volume and goal scoring, if you're in a points league that weights shots, individual shots as their own point weighting, and then additional point weighting for goals, this guy is definitely going to perform for you. They do have a 3-game week this week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, so it is the heavy nights, but he does have that positional flexibility, so he could get into your lineup. If you need anybody for those heavy nights, this guy would be a great pickup. And he is getting top line minutes and is on power play 1. So he's getting all the offensive opportunities in Philadelphia. He has the trust of the coach, and he's been performing for quite a while now. So it's a little bit of a surprise to me that he's only 16% owned, but an incredible week for Owen Tippett. And this is not the first time we've said that. So definitely keep that in mind if you need a dual position winger for this upcoming week. Up next, we have Josh Anderson. I mentioned him in a previous video when talking about Montreal ads. Single position right winger, so that does hurt a little bit, but 14% owned. He should be there for you in most leagues. On the week, 4 games, 5 points, 2 goals, 3 assists, 10 shots, 12 hits, and 5 blocks. So doing a little bit of everything. On the year, 21 goals in 68 games. So that's right about where Owen Tippett's goal production is. You can see 87th percentile in terms of goals, 85th in terms of shots, and then 2 hits per game, 83rd percentile there. So hitting, shooting, goal scoring forward, similar to Jason Zucker, albeit less productive with some of these categories than Zucker, but lately he's been getting it done. 4-game point streak, you can see down here on the game log, 2 goals, 3 assists, and then on top of that, 9 points in his last 11 games, 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points in his last 6 games, so it's been a longer sample size than just the past week. Now, he's third line 5-on-5, but he does get PP1 time, and he is on the first penalty kill unit, and that comes in handy because he has a shorthanded goal. That came in the last couple of weeks, and he's got 5 game-winning goals. So if you're in a points league that gives you extra bonus weighting for game winners, for whatever reason, he's getting a bunch, and that's pretty considerable thinking about how Montreal doesn't win a ton of games and the fact that he's got 5 game winners. So his percentage is much higher than some other guys that you're going to potentially find at 14% ownership. So if you're in need of a guy who could potentially get you some shorthanded points, game winners, goals, shots, hits. Only problem with Josh Anderson, they play Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday this week, so he might not be able to get in your lineup, especially being a single position right winger. So maybe keep this in the back of your mind for a 4-game week, or if you have some openings on your roster and you need a right wing this week, he would definitely be a guy I would look at because he's a veteran player. He's not going to be as streaky, and he's been doing it for a little while now, at least 11 games with 9 points in his last 11. So Josh Anderson, an excellent week, and it goes back a little bit further than that. And he's kind of a specialty piece with the shorthanded power play and the game winners on top of his regular production. So great week for Josh Anderson. And up next is a guy that there's a bunch of guys I could have mentioned here: Tom Wilson, Boone Jenner, TJ Oshie, Ryan Hartman. But I wanted to feature a deeper league option who I haven't talked about recently, unlike those players. So Wyatt Johnston, 4% owned, really nice deep league option for you. A single position center, 5 points in his last 4 games. He's got a 4-game goal scoring streak. You can see at the bottom a goal every game over the past week. 11 shots to boot, 2.75 shots per game, a little bit higher than his 1.94 average on the season. On the year, 35 points in 70 games, 20 goals. He was contending for the rookie goal title at one point. He might still be in that conversation at this point as well. 6 power play points is okay. It's not great. 2 game winners is decent. If your points league weights those a little bit differently. He's currently second line center with Jamie Benn and Evgeny Dadonov. Benn has been great all year. Dadonov's been much better since coming over to Dallas, and you're getting exposure to Dallas's top 6. And the reason why that's important is the Stars are number 1 in goals for per game over their last 10 games with 4.8 goals. So they're averaging a ton of goals per game over the past couple of games here, and getting access to one of the guys in their top 6 at only 4% owned is the main appeal to Wyatt Johnston right now, in addition to his 83rd percentile goal production. Not an option for a hits league or a blocks league, doesn't get a lot of either of those, and the power play numbers are a little bit low considering the fact that he is on PP2, and he does get some time there, but he just hasn't been as productive as some of the other guys that you can get access to on other teams. But nonetheless, he's red hot right now, and that's the thing with younger players, rookies. They're very streaky. When they're cold, they go cold for 15, 20 games. But when they're hot, they can sometimes ride those streaks for an extended period of time, a week or two, and you can rack up the points by riding one of those hot streaks. So if you want to do that, Wyatt Johnston is probably available for you in most of your league sizes. But that's going to do it for the forwards this week. Let's turn to the defensemen. And number 1, there's no question, it's Keandre Miller. 44% owned, a 4-point game last night. 2 goals, 5 assists, 7 points in 4 games this week, 11 shots, 8 hits, and 4 blocks. So he's been getting a little bit of everything for your category coverage. On the season, 38 points in 67 games is not bad at all. 2 game winners is pretty good for a defenseman, 144 hits, and he's a plus 12. So he's a younger defenseman who's rounding into form. This is I wouldn't necessarily call it a breakout season, but it's a partial breakout season in the fact that he's bringing his offensive game now to the level of a really good offensive defenseman, top 4 offensive defenseman. But if you look at his hub, he's more of a hits blocks defenseman, 87th percentile in hits, 2.18 hits per game, 1.26 blocks per game. The assists are high because of the talent that he's working with on the Rangers roster right now. His power play numbers are relatively low because he just did not get any time on the power play until the last month. Now he's on one of the power play units every now and then. They have Fox on one unit. They sometimes have either Miller or Trouba on the other unit. So that is not going to produce a ton of power play points for you, but it's a good little feature that he does get some power play time, and he does have 3 power play points on the season. So that's a little bit of a bonus in his direction, because other than that, he would have been 0 on the power play points per game percentile here just a month ago. The goal scoring, now this file does not reflect the game that he had the other night, last night, where he put in 2 goals and 2 assists. So the goal percentile should come up a little bit next time I update this, which will be either midweek or at the latest Saturday. So his number is continuing to rise. That change interval should go up after the last game as well. But he's been one of these guys that's in this range for most of the season, a pretty reliable streaming option, especially when he's hot, when the Rangers are rolling, and that's definitely happening right now. So Per Statboy Steven on Twitter, since having a full lineup after the trade deadline, the Rangers are number 1 in wins, points, point percentage, goals for, and 3rd in goals against. So they are on fire right now, and there's not a ton of Rangers that you can get access to on the waiver wire, but Keandre Miller might be there for you in an 8-team league, a 10-team league, and a 12-team league. They do play 4 times this week. 3 of those are the heavy nights, but they do have an off-night game as well. So if you need a defenseman for 4-game week this week, Keandre Miller has been getting it done, and he's, again, a hits and blocks defenseman who's been putting in some offensive production as well. Excellent week from Keandre Miller, and that brings us to another guy that I've been talking about pretty much nonstop here. I mentioned him in the live stream the other day, and that is Mike Matheson, 30% owned. That ownership is criminal considering his production over the last month or so. Last week, 4 games, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points, 10 shots, 8 blocks, and a power play point. On the season, only 36 games. He's had a bunch of injury issues this year, but 23 points, 0.66 point per game, which is really good for a defenseman. 6 power play points, a game winner, 87 shots, 55 blocks, 46 hits. And if you look at his player hub, 88th percentile in blocks, 85th in shots, 84th in assists. The power play is 77th and rising. The hits are decent, 1.29 hits per game. He's not targetable for hits, but he's going to cover that for you if you need it. And then 70th percentile in goal production, which is really good for a defenseman. He's very complete, which is why he's a 78 on the hits and blocks hub. He covers a little bit of everything, and this is not just the past week that he's been doing this. He's got 12 points in his last 15 games, 7 points in his last 10, 4 points in his last 4. Since the All-Star break, 6 goals, 9 assists, 15 points in 19 games, 3 power play points, and a game winner. And over that time, as I just mentioned before, Montreal averaging 3.36 goals per game in that stretch, which is a big uptick from what they were previously in the season. So they're starting to score, and as I mentioned with Josh Anderson, even when they lose, they're putting up 4 points, 4 goals a game. So if you can get access to the number 1 power play guy, the power play quarterback, he's out there in all situations. You can see his ice time, 25 minutes, 20 minutes, 24 minutes, 22 minutes. They pretty much have to ride him. Joel Edmondson had a great week as well, a goal and 2 assists, a bunch of peripherals as well. Could have featured him here, but Matheson is still relatively low owned at only 30%, despite the fact that he's been productive for quite a while, going back to the All-Star break. So if he's available, he's probably my number 1 defensive ad this week, although I did just get a note that Cale Makar is injured again. That could bump the stock of Sam Girard and Bowen Byram, especially if they are playing all the off nights this week. So other than that, Mike Matheson would have been my number 1 defenseman to add this week because he's been very productive over an extended period of time. But that's going to do it for the D. Let's turn to the goaltender of the week, and this is where the controversy begins. Joel Hofer, 17% owned, 2 games, 2 wins, 1.02 goals against, 970 save percentage, and an unofficial shutout. This is a problem that the NHL has. He went off for a skate repair at some point during the second period. Thomas Greiss came in, made 1 save, and that denied Joel Hofer of the shutout. And what that did for the THHL, there was a playoff battle being conducted. Lake Mohawk Moose was in 7th, Ottawa Truckers in 6th. Had Ottawa Truckers gotten this shutout right here, this would have been a 5-4 score. He would have increased by 1 point and been into the playoffs, and Mohawk Moose would have been down to 7th. But because of the fact that Hofer left in the middle of the game, got a skate repair, and Greiss made a save, denied that shutout for Hofer and Ottawa Truckers and screwed him out of a playoff spot. The margins were incredibly thin across a number of matchups yesterday in this league. I got bumped to 2nd. I'm going to withhold my comments on this because it's very incendiary. I'm very bitter about this as well. Just got a raw deal from the hockey gods yesterday. My opponent picked up Jaro Halak. I told my Discord group I just need Halak not to get a shutout. And what happens? He gets a shutout. So very pissed off about this. Not going to go into too much detail, but nonetheless, Joel Hofer also cost Ottawa Truckers his playoff spot. So if that happened to you, let me know in the comments, because this might be a thing that we have to bring to the attention of the league, because this is going to affect not just fantasy sports, but also sports betting. If you, for whatever reason, put money on Joel Hofer to get a shutout yesterday and you lost that bet, I would be really pissed, and I would definitely want some accountability from the league to kind of change that rule and give him the shutout, because Greiss made one save. It did not affect the game at all. So an incredible week for Hofer nonetheless. He gets called up in the absence of Jordan Binnington, who was suspended. And my opinion on that is they should just keep riding Hofer and see what they have. He's young. He's 22. Hadn't started a game since 2021. Comes in, has 2 really quality starts, gets 2 wins for the St. Louis Blues, plays spoiler, not just for fantasy, but in the actual NHL as well, kind of upsetting the Winnipeg Jets the other night, and they are kind of reeling right now, having some issues scoring goals. So a lot to digest with Joel Hofer, but he did have an excellent week. He deserves that shutout, and Truckers deserves a playoff spot. Let's give him some love in the comments section as well, because that's a raw deal for sure. That's going to do it for the main course, but let's get on to the honorable mention, and this is a guy that you can own in almost every single league, and that is Pavel Dorofeyev. Left wing, 1% owned. He's only played 7 games this year, and I think that's his career total is 7 games, but on the week, a little bit more than a week. He only had 3 games this week, but that March 12th game I'm going to count as part of this week as well, because 4 games since being recalled recently, 3 goals, 2 assists, 2 power play points, and 10 shots. So incredibly productive. Only shutout in that game against Calgary. Other than that, really consistently productive over the past week or so. He's currently second line with William Karlsson and Riley Smith, so that's excellent line exposure. He's a former third-round pick in 2019. Last year, 52 points in 63 games in Henderson. This year, 17 points in 32 games in Henderson. Gets the call up and now is close to a point per game in the NHL for the Vegas Golden Knights, who are fighting for position in the Pacific Division, so they definitely need all the goal scoring that they can get. We also had a Phil Kessel sighting in that game the other night against Columbus. He had a goal and an assist, which was, I kind of teased that in the live stream. I did briefly mention Phil Kessel as a potential ad if you were in need of it on Saturday or Sunday, but kind of a crazy week, a crazy Saturday and Sunday schedule of matchups that had a lot of playoff implications for fantasy. So hopefully you made it out on the other side. Hopefully you made the playoffs, or if you're in your playoffs, you made it to the next week. Week 23 is going to be an interesting week nonetheless. I do have a bye in one of my leagues, but the Data Draft League, we just instituted playoffs, and we have the first matchup of the week this week, so I will be focusing on that. I wish you all the best of luck in your matchups. If you like this video, leave a like, leave a comment down below. Let me know how you did in your matchups so far, and anything that you can like or comment or subscribe or whatever, that all helps the channel, so I appreciate all of that. But as always, thanks again, and I will see you in the next one.